Welcome back. Today I wanted to take a look at another master game. The game that I chose today is between Divya Deshmukh and Velimir Ivic. I'm not sure how you say this gentleman's name. She's from India, he's from Serbia. They met in the open section of the recent FIDE Grand Swiss tournament, which I believe was held in Uzbekistan. There are a few remarkable things about this. One is that Divya has just won the Women's World Cup like a week or two before this and got her Grandmaster title and automatically qualified for the Women's Candidates Tournament for next year's World Chess Championship for the women's side. Since she'd already qualified for that, she didn't need to play in the women's section of the Grand Swiss here, so she decided to play in the open section, which I believe she was only one of two women that did, and there was only one person in the entire open section that was rated lower than her, and she never faced that person. But I thought she did pretty well for herself being one of the lower rated people and being a brand new Grandmaster and facing off against people rated 150 points higher than her, etc. But anyway, I wanted to take a look at this game and see if I could learn something. I chose this specific game of hers because she faced the Sicilian defense, which I sometimes face when I play e4, and I often don't do very well at it. Oh, chess.com. I forgot that when you look at the Masters games from these events and tournaments, that it's on a different format and it won't fill the screen like a normal board does. Let me see if I can crop this a little better. Okay, I think that's about the best I can do to show the full board, although now the move list is hidden and most of the graph there, but you can see the peaks and valleys on this graph above my head here that white was ahead most of the way. Well, let's just get started. She played e4, which I have been playing very consistently lately after trying d4 for a year or two and then trying the English for a little while, and I've switched it back to d4. And when my opponent plays c5, what I've been playing here is c3, which I remember hearing in I think a Gotham Chess video. I think that's the Alapin version of the Sicilian or something like that. I haven't had a lot of luck with it. I think the idea is to protect d4, but you could just play d4 now, I think. Maybe you want to play d4 and still have a center pawn, but I'm not sure. I never really studied it. But what she played was knight to f3, which I think is a really old response to the Sicilian defense. According to the opening book, knight to f3 is by far the most common move played by grandmasters here. Okay, well that makes sense. He played e6 here, which I think is trying to protect the d5 push. I think I understand that. And here are most grandmasters, by far the most, 121,000, and the next one is for only 14,000, have played d4. So almost 10 times as many as the second place move. But she did not play that. She played b3, which is the fifth most common here in the openings books. So when she played this, the rating didn't change any, so it must have been fine. Obviously, they're still in prep. You can tell by their clocks they started with an hour and 40 minutes. They both have more than that. That means they're taking less than 30 seconds per move. I assume that's going to be the case out to move 10 or more. He played knight to c6, which I think the few times I tried the Sicilian, that was one of the things that I played. And obviously, when you play the English opening, you want to put your knight behind the c-pawn. And now that she has played b3, her best move is bishop to b2, and that's the reason that you played b3, I think. So, she played that. That makes sense. I don't think I've ever done anything like this against the Sicilian with a fianchettoed bishop on that side. I assume like any fianchettoed bishop, the whole point is, to control one of the very long diagonals on the board, and especially to be pointed at where you think their king might castle here in just a little bit. Stockfish says if it was playing with black pieces, it would play a6 right now, and that is also the second best move. I'm curious about the opening book. d6 is what masters play here. a6 is the third most common move. I'm not sure what a6 is about. Now, again, that's not what he played, but maybe it's because you want to play the d-pawn and you're worried about this bishop here, so you want to stop that by playing a6 first. I don't know. But Divya's opponent played queen to c7 here, and again, the eval didn't change much, so there must have been, several moves that were all about equal here. This move, I'm not sure what that does. I mean, obviously it defends the knight, it puts the queen on a diagonal, but you haven't developed any pieces yet, so that move to me goes against almost everything I've been taught as a beginner, even as an intermediate player, about how to start your games. So I don't understand that move. I'm not sure what it's for. Maybe it is because you're about to play d5, and now if the bishop comes over, you're not worried about messing up your pawn structure? I don't know. I think there are times in the English, when I played the English and we got the knight up here, there were times that I was supposed to play queen to c2, which is basically the opposite side of that, but I didn't understand that either. The engine does say it would get this bishop out now. It would either go ahead and put it over here on that knight, or put it in front of your d-pawn, which is really strange to me. But that's what the engine says it would do. Putting it on d3 is the best move according to the engine, and grandmasters here have all played c4. Almost all, and the rest have played g3, I guess attempting to fianchetto both bishops. Nobody in this opening book has played bishop to d3, but a handful have put the bishop out on b5. But yeah, there's no bishop to d3 listed at all. Okay, well, she played c4, which is, the most common move in that position, although we're starting to run out of master games at this position. Now, she actually spent 10 minutes on that move, and he hasn't thought yet. He's still at 140. Now, 10 minutes doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of prep. I have learned that. Sometimes they're still in prep, but they know they have lots of time, and so they can consider 2 or 3 different possibilities that they were studying. But sometimes it does mean that they've reached the end of their prep. It might mean that she wasn't sure what to do about queen to c7. Maybe that was something she hadn't anticipated. So anyway, she thought for 10 minutes about that move, which is wild to me because I play 10-minute games. The entire game has to take place in 10 minutes, or at least my half of the game. So thinking about one move for 10 minutes is something that I can't really conceive of at this moment, but I assume that's to stop d5 because a lot of these moves on black's side look like they've been preparing for d5, right? We've got this e-pawn preparing for d5. We brought the queen up, I guess, to protect the knight, which kind of had a thing about d5 here. Now again, his best move is a6, but the engine says knight to f6 is also fine. In the database, okay, a6 is a common move in this position, but so is knight to f6, and we're down to 21 games. I think you can see that above my head there. So not very many left in this position. Okay, he played knight to f6. Eval bar is still right in the middle, and Stockfish would play e5 here, or knight to c3, which is what she played. And again, switching back to the opening book, that's the most common move here of these 9 games that are left. Okay, so she played knight to c3, which does block your bishop a little bit, but it also starts controlling some squares on the other side of the board, which you have already begun controlling, but the knight helps to control 2 of them a little extra. Not to mention your other knight, which is also pointed at some squares on the other side of the board. And here black did play a6, which was one of the most common moves. I think it was one that Stockfish suggested. And now she played g3. So she is intending on fiancatoing both bishops? Yes. Okay. She's got not a full lock, but she has significant control over center squares. And now she's going to put this other bishop up here. Both of them are taking their time about developing all the minor pieces, which maybe is common in this version of the Sicilian. The engine would get this bishop out or play knight to d4. And what does the book say on this one? Oh, now there's 36 games. So we must have transposed because we were down to like 5 games. But earlier when it had said this and this, the a6 and the g3, if people played those moves then and then still made the other moves that these 2 players made, we would result in this position. They just got there by a different order. And here most masters have played rook to b8, even though it isn't the top move, one of the top 2 moves. But when he played rook to b8, it didn't change the eval much. And I assume that the other masters wouldn't have played it, if it wasn't a good move. I don't know what the point of it is, for sure, other than we're still delaying d5, so maybe we're thinking about b5 now, and you put the rook behind it. Maybe you see this bishop coming here, you're worried about the e-pawn moving forward, and then this bishop's going to be kind of pointed at the rook, although there are going to be so many pieces in the way. So I don't know why rook to b8 is something you would even think about. But now that she's played g3, she might as well play bishop to b2. She did, g2, sorry. And he was thinking about playing b5 because that's the next move on his list. Are we still in any book games? b5 is the most common move here. Or the bishop to e7. Stockfish is suggesting bishop to e7 or again knight to d4. But as you saw, no masters have played knight to d4 here. But b5, because that had to have been what he moved it over there for, was this b5 move. And she is supposed to take it, which relinquishes some control over here. But I guess at this point, you don't have a ton of options. And both of them have thought a little bit at this point, but they're still not doing those long, deep thinks that sometimes these players do. But yeah, taking the pawn is what Stockfish says is best. That's what Divya did. And of course, he takes back. Are we out of book yet? No, there are still 2 games remaining in the Masters database here, and castling is what everybody has played at this point. Okay, well, she castled here. That is what Stockfish says, and she's got a 0.6, closer to 0.5 here. Now, as someone at my level, if I was in this position and these things had just happened in a game against another opponent at my level, I would expect b4 now. That's not one of the top 2 moves listed by the engine, but that is what he played. So, sometimes there's not that much difference between our level and their level because some moves just look too tempting to pass up. The remaining book moves here are d6 and b4. There's only 2 games. As you can see, the game that went d6 here ended in a draw, and the game that played b4 ended up with white winning. I don't think that's this game because I don't think these games go into the Masters database immediately, but we're about to find out if we keep looking over there. He did play b4, which, as I said, is what I would expect at my level. Now I guess you have to move the knight to either a4 or d5. That's d5, right? Well, I wouldn't move it to d5. The engine thinks you'd be just fine if you gave up your knight for the pawn. They would take, and you would take back, and they would drop this knight back, and then you would play rook to e1, and you're just fine, down in a whole piece for a pawn. And then they would take that pawn too. Oh my goodness. I don't understand chess at all. I don't think anybody has played that at this point. Yeah, the only game that reached this position played knight to a4, which is what she played. And maybe that game listed in the book here is this game, because it said only one game has played e5 here, and that's what he played. And here it's listed as a mistake. I know it's hidden behind my head, but it is listed as a mistake by Stockfish. What he should have played was bishop to a6, which targets this rook, or taken this undefended pawn. That's interesting, because I think at my level, most of the players that I have played would probably take this undefended pawn right now. Purely by accident, I very often leave my e4 pawn undefended, forgetting that it's undefended, and almost all the time my opponents notice it. You'd think I would have figured that out by now, but that's interesting that my opponents would probably play the best move here, but this guy didn't. He played e5, and I'm not sure why. I do have opponents that would probably play bishop to a6 here, just because I have opponents that, get their bishops out and point at my rooks, even though you can clearly move the rooks. And I'm not sure why that's the best move, because it forces the rook to defend the undefended pawn. So then I don't know where that bishop would go after that. It says this one would get out and that bishop would just stay on a6. But yeah, he played e5 here, which was listed as a mistake by the engine, and Divya's just up +1 point something. If she'll play rook to c1, has to be rook to c1. Her next best move is to take this pawn, which again, I don't understand. You're giving up a knight for a pawn. Because yes, we have this bishop over here defending that too, but once our knight's there, we only have one piece defending that square, and they have two attackers on that square. I don't know what her thought process was here, but Divya might have done the same math that I just did and didn't even consider taking that pawn. But she found rook to c1, which was the engine's best move, or favorite move. I'm just not sure. I really don't know. I guess the idea is that they're not going to be able to get this pawn, so there's no point in the rook staying over there anymore. This is a semi-open file. You're not sure what else to do. I mean, but that was the best move by the engine. So it's not a move that you make just because, oh, it seems like on principle you want your rooks on semi-open files. It seems like there's a reason for that I don't know. I just noticed that maybe it's because our knight is already pointed at their c-pawn, and now we have another attacker on it. Currently, they only have one defender on it, so they need to play d6 now. Or still bishop to a6. That's also one of the moves. But her opponent did play d6, which was the best move. This pawn is still undefended. Our e-pawn is still undefended. And I wonder if that's okay because their king is in the middle. Black hasn't castled yet, so if they take this pawn, we put our rook over, and then... But now that pawn's defended, so... And here she has an only move as well. It has to be d4, which earlier seemed like a better idea than it does now, because now they have two pawns on that. So aren't you just going to lose a pawn out of this deal? By the way, at any point, if you're still watching, when I ask a question and I don't immediately come up with an answer for it, or you think you know a better answer than the one that I give in the video, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Even if what you're thinking isn't what Stockfish is thinking, it might be better than what I'm thinking, and I would always appreciate, any suggestions like that, and I'll usually comment back and tell you whether or not I understood your answer, whether it seems like a good idea, and so on. But anyway, she did play d4 here. Rook to e1 was her second best move, but d4, which looks like it just gives up a pawn, but they're not supposed to take it. They can. He can take it with the c-pawn and still be as bad off as he already is, but his best move is knight to d7. Okay, are we still in book here? Okay, yeah, see, now I'm starting to think that this might be the game that they're playing here. Because I don't think they're in prep anymore now that they've each spent, 40 or more minutes, not including the 30-second they get for each move that they make. But is it just going to go through this entire game? I think we might be in their game, be the only one left in the book here. So they left book back when there were still two moves left and it switched to this, I think. Anyway, he found knight to d7, which is incredible because I have no idea why you would play that. I mean, obviously it defends these two pawns. I get that. But they are already defended, are they not? And also, why wouldn't you have just taken? Now that's not even the second best move. Stockfish has added in rook to b5 as the second best move, which is here. Okay, are we still worried about their c-pawn? Is that what the problem is? So why not take? That's still my question. Why not take? What does it harm to take? And what would we do in response? Because again, they have more attackers on that square than we do. If they take, we are supposed to take back with the knight. Again, giving up a knight for a pawn and we're ahead. I wonder if she would have found that, or if she would have known that already because she's maybe prepared out this far. I don't know. But if she takes here and he takes back, now we're supposed to push this pawn, which they can also take. What? And we're way ahead if we push this pawn and they're going to take it. We're up 1.5. This isn't what happened in the game, but oh, now we get this knight. That's the kind of thing that might have happened in one of my games, but we wouldn't have known that that's what was going to happen, right? I would have thought, oh no, I lost my knight because I miscounted, and then it would have got to this position. I'll be like, oh, I get the knight back because my bishop's also pointed there. But I definitely wouldn't have seen it ahead of time. But even then, I don't see why it's that bad, why it's still not listed as even the second best move, because they come out even, I think. Anyway, he hopped back there, and according to the move list, this is the point of Divya's first mistake. It wasn't her only one, but it was her first one, and we're on move 14. Now, what she is supposed to do is take the e-pawn. Well, and I hate to say it because I did just look at the engine's recommended moves, but I think that's what I would have played. Obviously, I could be wrong. My thinking just now could have been influenced by what I've seen. But we played this up here, and when I played it up there, had I played it, which I probably wouldn't have, but if I had played that, I would have expected them to take. And since they didn't take, they went back here, and I wouldn't have understood why my opponent had gone back there. I would take here. And I think the reason that I would take the e-pawn instead of the c-pawn is not only because I have already 2 other pieces, pointed over here, which they would have 2 pieces pointed there too, or 3 actually, once they took with the pawn. But that's one of their center pawns. And I've had it drilled into my head that, if you have a chance to clear out one of their center pawns, that's a good idea. But if I went the other way, I would be trading off one of my center pawns for one of their not center pawns. Although if they took back with that pawn, I guess they would be losing a center pawn for that too. But anyway, yeah, I think I would have been tempted to take this way, which is the best move. Obviously, I wouldn't have known it was the best move, and I certainly wouldn't have known that queen to c2 was the second best move. But Divya took the c pawn, which I don't understand the logic of that. That won't be the last time I say that about a grandmaster's move. Believe me. But yeah, I don't understand why she chose that one. And how long did she spend on that? She spent 9 minutes, 8 minutes on that? Okay. And I also don't understand why black is supposed to take back with the knight instead of the pawn. Because I would have taken back with the pawn if I had been playing with the black pieces right now. I definitely would have taken back with the d pawn, even though, again, it's trading a center pawn for a flank pawn. But white's got 2 pieces pointed up there. So wouldn't you want the first piece to take being a pawn? So white would be far less tempted to take anything there. And that must have been what Ivic thought, because he didn't do what the engine said. He had what's called a miss here and took with the pawn. And that puts her back up at +1. And according to this little graph right here, we are right about here. I don't know if you can see that dot on your screen, but that valley right before it, her mistake, and then his miss coming up out of that valley is the last time that they were close to even. She was never less ahead than this for the rest of the game, according to that graph. Even way over here, it's +1.35, 1.5. So that right there, some might say, is what lost him the game. And that is wild to me, that on something that simple, the difference between taking with those 2 pieces is basically what lost him the game. And how long did he spend on that? He only spent a minute or less. He spent very little time on this move. So he must have already considered she's going to take one of these 2 pawns. And, before she did, he already thought, if she takes this pawn, I know what I'll do. And if she takes that pawn, I know what I'll do. And he'd already decided probably to have moved that quickly, because he had enough time to write down her move and then make his move, and didn't take that long. But why is the knight taking back so much more important there? But because he took with the pawn, he basically never had a chance again. And she had a brilliant move and another great move coming up. I'm going to go to the point of her next mistake, because she did get a lead here of +3 or so, but then brought it back down to about this level at some point. So let's just skip through these next several moves. She got that bishop out to h3, which I definitely wouldn't have done. We have to do a knight trade over here, looks like. Or do we? We don't, because there's a free pawn there. Is that pawn not free? Oh no, this bishop's free. Wait, is that why that's brilliant? Because it's a bishop sacrifice? Because she moved the bishop out there. He is supposed to take it, and he did. And now she's supposed to, she's got the fork out here, but he's pointed at her rook. So if he moves the queen and she takes the rook and he takes back, then he can move his rook. Okay, and queen to b7 is his best move. That's what he played. She is supposed to take the rook, and then he's supposed to take her rook. No, he's supposed to take her knight, and then she moves her rook over. Well, I was wrong. I thought that she was giving up something, but they came out of that even on material, and she's now up +1.6. And here he made another mistake. Instead of playing bishop to g4 or h5, which is what he was supposed to do, he got a bishop out. The problem with that is that there's an undefended pawn in the middle of the board. So now she's up +2. And maybe at this point, he realized that something had gone wrong, because he starts to flounder here. Now, they both have spent a lot of time. I moved through those moves really quickly, and they took a long time on them. You can see they're both down to 24 minutes. And I was going really slowly back where they were going quickly. So, it has a weird effect if you're paying attention to the times, too. So he doesn't play the best move here. and she's up plus 2.5. And now there's another undefended pawn. So she takes that. So she's up 2 pawns now. He has to play rook to g8. And the engine says her best move is knight to d4. I could be wrong, but it looks a lot like this bishop is hanging. And wouldn't you be tempted to bring that bishop back? The bishop you just took that pawn with, because you knew they were going to move the rook over. But he did move the rook over, and now there's nothing defending that bishop. And this knight to d4 doesn't defend the bishop. It does aim at this knight, which is only defended by the queen. And we also have a rook pointed at that knight. So I get what you're doing, I think. She didn't play knight to d4, but she basically did the same thing. And the engine says that's pretty well okay. And he was supposed to take it, but instead he saved his bishop. You saw the eval bar move. That move was not counted as a mistake, but I think it should have. That doesn't make sense to me. What he's supposed to do is take the knight and then she's going to take back. But bringing this back gives her a new target. Wouldn't you just take the bishop now? That's what Stockfish would do. She did not. That's interesting. Okay, so, and this time I said it before I looked at the engine. I think she had gone there with the intention of a knight trade, so she made a knight trade here, even though the best move would have been to take that bishop. I would have thought so just because the board is feeling pretty open here and you'd think bishops would be better. But it says if she took that, then he would take her bishop, and then she would trade off for this knight over here. But instead she trades for a knight right away, and I assume he did that. That's the best move, and I assume he did that because you're kind of pointed down through here. And now do you save your bishop that you've given up over there? No. You're supposed to play queen to d4, which would guard that bishop. Or bring your bishop back to d4. Okay, that's what I probably would have done, but it says the queen to d4 is better. She played queen to c2, and it wasn't as good. And now we're getting to the point of the graph right here where her advantage is starting to come back down, although it's not as far down as it got in just a little bit later. He did play his best move. Not sure what that does. Oh, I guess she was aiming at it, so he protected it. She played her best move, which is saving her other bishop. And for a second there, I thought he was up a piece, but she's up an exchange, right? No, he is up a piece. He has more pieces than she does. He's got 2 minor pieces for one of her rooks, and then she has a couple of extra pawns, 3 extra pawns, and she's ahead. I wonder if she knew it, because it's obviously a huge difference to go through a game with the eval bar here than to go through the game without the eval bar. And she does know that if she adds up all the material, that she's up 2 points of material overall. But I wonder if she knew she was ahead in Stockfish's opinion, or if he knew that. Because having 1 fewer piece near the end can sometimes, get tricky. He is supposed to play rook to g6. Wow, I don't know if I would have found that, but he did. And she's supposed to play queen to c7, and trade off the queens now. I might have done that, but not if I was playing a grandmaster. If I was playing a grandmaster, I would have resigned, 20, 30 moves ago. You know what I'm saying? If I was playing against somebody at my level, I might offer a queen trade here, but she brought this rook over to, there's only 2 open files on the board, right? And she's got rooks on both of them. So I understand. It wasn't her best move, but I understand the principle. That may not have been her what she was thinking, but that's what I would have been thinking if I put that rook there. It's an open file. He's supposed to play rook to c6, but he played bishop to c6, which allows her to put her bishop here, offering the bishop trade. Is he supposed to take it? Yes, he is. Did he take it? No, he took this pawn, which was apparently an inaccuracy, even though it's not marked as such, but only if she plays queen to b2. Not queen to e2. And this was her second mistake of the game and her only other one. She played queen to e2 here. That's a mistake that takes her down to just over +1 again, but only if he takes this bishop or plays rook to e6. He played rook to e6. Okay, that wouldn't have been something that you could do if she had done the thing that the engine said, which is probably why that move was better. I think I understand that, but now you can trade here. Is that what she did? No. She played queen to b5, hoping for the queen trade. Okay, so see, I don't think she knew she was ahead if she's just trying to trade down to an endgame. I don't know, maybe she did. Maybe she did. Because now you have to trade queens, right? And surely she did, yeah. Okay, but she's up still +1. We're going to trade the bishops now. Then we're going to offer a rook trade. Basically, not really forcing the rook trade because you can play this. Wait, okay. Wanting to trade on your own terms. Because now she is supposed to trade. Wait, was the graph wrong? Because here it says she played king to f1, and now she's at 0.8, so we're under +1 again. This is slightly worse than back when I said she had never fallen, behind any further than that, or got any less ahead than that. The engine wants knight to e5, but instead he put the bishop there, which is interesting, but not horrible. She brought the rook up. Okay, I think probably trying to double here and the pawn protects the rook, I'm guessing was the idea. He needs to play knight to b6, and he did. The idea here, I assume, is to come this way. Now the engine wants f3. Okay, I think I get that. She obviously saw where he's going. Also, now they're down to just a minute or two each, so they have to be playing quickly. I think they have 5 more moves before they hit their time control to get the extra time. So she moved over here to stop the knight from coming in. He dropped that bishop back, and now are we going to get a rook trade? Not necessarily. Rook to d4 is her best move, and that's what she played, I guess, aiming for this pawn. His best move is knight to d5, which he played, because now the bishop's guarding that, so you can't take it. But now you can take this rook. Is that what she did? It's basically her best move, yeah, and then takes... Oh, that was a mistake. Okay. So is this the mistake that lost him the game? Because he should have taken with the pawn. It was worse to take with the king, and now it's nearly +2 if she plays king to e1. Obviously, you can't take this pawn because the knight's defending it. You can't take the knight because it's defended. I don't know what else you would do here other than push a pawn, but king to e1, not king to e2, but king to e1 is the best move. King to e2 would probably run into the knight on c3, right? So, okay, king to e1, she found it. They still haven't received their extra time yet. He needs to play h5, but he played this instead. Now she's up +3. That move was not marked as a mistake, but we just went from barely +2 to over +3, only if she plays king to d2. And she did. Wow. Now he needs to play bishop to f1 or f5. He played h5, which wasn't quite as good. She needs to put her rook in front of that pawn, and she did. He needs to play f5 or f6. He does. And now can you take this pawn? It is the best move by far. Okay, she took it. Now, I guess I was going to say the knight can't move, but it really can, because whichever place it moves to, it's going to be defending the bishop. That's not what he's supposed to do, though, but he did. Okay, now you're supposed to play a4. She played a3, so she lost a little bit there. Knight to b1 check is the best move, and they have their extra time now. And she is supposed to go to c1, and then I assume he's going to take the pawn on a3, yeah. And then what are you supposed to do? Rook to h4? Okay, he played rook to h4 because this pawn is defending the knight. What are we supposed to do on the black side now? Bishop to c6, okay, that's what he found. Now do we take that pawn? Yeah, we take that pawn finally. We couldn't earlier, but because this knight came down in here, now nothing was defending or could defend that pawn. She's still up 2 points of material, but I wonder, does she know she's up +3 or almost +4, even if he plays his best move? He did play his best move, and she played one of her very best moves. Knight to d6. No, it's changed its mind. At first it said knight to d6, but now it's saying king to f7 or king to e7. That's interesting. He played knight to d6. King to d2 is her best move, and that's what she played. Wow. I'm going to say wow a lot in these games because I don't know how you would determine that's your best move. I mean, I know that the rook is guarding these, but couldn't you still check here? Not the best move. The best move for him is to put the knight back where it was. Wow. Instead, he put this bishop here, which is +4 if she plays h5 or rook to b6. It flipped back and forth a couple of times. He did play one of those. Sorry. I don't know why. Several times I've mixed up he and she here. English is a weird language. I should just use their names, except I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his right. Or hers, for that matter, but I've heard hers said a lot, Divya. Now, black needed to play king to e7 or bishop to f3, but he played king to d7. It didn't change it that much. It's +4.5. And Divya played her best move, one of her 2 best moves, king to e3. And then he resigned. Well, I am about out of time, but if you've made it this far in the video, why did he resign here? Is it because of extra pawns? That's the only thing that I can think of is these extra pawns. And I guess this one is a passed pawn, but aren't you going to have trouble protecting the passed pawn? Isn't his next move going to be bringing this king over? And then what do? You have to retreat the rook, and then is he going to still bring the king, I guess? I don't know. Then she'll start playing h4. Maybe that's the point, is that he can't stop her from advancing the h-pawn. Because it certainly doesn't look like a resignable position to me, but obviously I'm not a grandmaster and never will be at this rate. But I mean, good job to Divya for doing such a good job in this tournament. Again, one of only 2 women in a pretty large field of the open side of the Grand Swiss. I mentioned in a recent video that my favorite chess players are the young up-and-coming ones who are, making strides, still increasing rating. We don't yet know where their ceiling is. She's one of those, so I'm excited to see how she does next year in the candidates tournament, and maybe even in the women's championship if she survives the candidates. And there's a whole host of other young players that are up and coming, underdogs on both the men and women's sides who are Going to be really exciting to watch in the next few years. If you know why this position is so losing for black, and if it's not this pawn, let me know. And thanks for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.